After the closed session, I got two resolutions after the closed session.
Yeah, we're moving to closed session. Unless I move it to right before it's there.
Okay, then I'll stick around.
For the TV people, they can shut it all down and
Yeah.
not have to worry about turning it back.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I don't think it should be any problem getting it through, so if you're more system done.
Yep, yep.
Cross my fingers.
Did you bring this with?
Oh, yeah, I did, but you already gave me. That's right. Oh,
Who are you short with?
John.
No, Dave.
Yep, Dave. Ah.
Oh my,
It was my birthday yesterday.
oh my, thank you. Okay, looks like we are ready, so I'll call this meeting to order at 8:30, the way I read the clock. Certify that the open meeting laws have all been met.
Yes.
And first item is election of officers to this committee due to the resignation. At this point, nominations would be open for a chair.
I nominate Mr. Larson. Seems though he's sitting there already.
Well, he's vice chair. Right?
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
He's sitting in the chair spot for us.
Do we need a second, or how do you?
And, no,
That's one nomination,
one
but you gotta
nomination.
ask.
Yep. Any other nominations for chair? Any other nominations? Any other nominations?
And somebody can make a motion to
To,
close nominations and cast a unanimous.
yep. Somebody want to make that, other than me?
Nominations, cast the chair.
Yep, thank you. Voice vote or
There's
individual?
gotta be a second for that one.
Gotta be a second, yep.
Voice vote is fine.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. Now then, the nominations are open for a vice chair, seeing as though I don't have that anymore.
That's why I put if needed.
I'll nominate David Ort.
Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Is that?
I make a
Close.
motion that nominations be closed and cast unanimous, David Orson.
Do I have a second?
Second. Oh, I can't, maybe I
Yeah,
can't.
you can.
Oh, I
Yep,
can,
yep,
okay,
yep.
second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same
I
sign.
heard
Okay, thank you. Next is the adoption of the agenda. I would like to suggest that we take item 12 and item 13 and move them down to after item 21. Make it easier for the TV people. They can, at that point, shut down the TV and not have to sit around and turn it on.
I'll make a motion to adopt agenda with those two moves.
Okay,
Second.
motion and second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Meeting agendas from previous meetings, I think it is.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All right. Opposed, same sign? Carried. Now we come to the public comment period. Members of the public will have a 15-minute block of time to comment on today's agenda items. Members of the public must be present at the beginning of the meeting or comment period will be waived. Public comment period may be extended or curtailed at discretion of the chair after advisement by Executive Finance Committee. Anybody wishing to call in can call in on 715-538-1770. Any public comment?
I think you can just go on.
Yep.
If somebody wants to call in or say something.
Yep, leave it open. If somebody wants to call in, they can. Item 7, county sales tax update.
Okay, our October payment was $228,746.32. Puts us at $1,733,963.10, which we're $30,000 ahead of last year yet, even though this payment was about $20,000 less than last year. So we are still on the same route of being maybe about 400,000, well, maybe 300,000 over last year.
Okay. Any questions of that? Okay, thank you. General fund update.
Okay, the only change was the upgrade to the failing radio equipment that you passed at the October County Board, which was $500,000. So our general fund unallocated is $3,138,552.75.
Any questions? Okay. Department reports/requests. Item A, County Treasurer Lori Halama.
You should have received my report with the agenda. And good news, interest rates keep going up for us, for the money we have invested. And tax delinquencies are down, so that's good news too. Any questions on my report?
Now, did the cancellation of outstanding checks come through your department, or is that somebody else?
Yes, that's through my department.
Your department, okay.
Yep.
That's the list of them. Anybody have any questions of her?
Is the number of tax delinquencies down, or the total number of dollars, or both?
I didn't compare that. I'd have to
Okay.
look at that. You mean the number of parcels?
Yeah,
Is
I
that
mean,
what
is
you're?
there a large
Well, I know
owner,
we
or-
got paid, that sand mine paid their 2019 taxes.
Okay.
So
That's
that
probably the
helped
big
a
one,
lot.
yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
that was like 200,000, so that could explain why we are down that much.
Is there any others similar to that, or?
No,
anywhere
they're
close?
still behind on their 20s and 21s,
Okay.
but, yeah,
Okay,
okay.
if there's no other questions, thank you. At that point, it says to do something with the resolution.
Right, that's next on the agenda.
Is it? Not
Because it's
me?
under Lori.
Yep.
Okay.
Sorry. So we have a resolution before us, I think.
Everybody should have gotten a copy of it. Yep.
These are checks that are over 2 years old and they have not been cashed. We make every attempt to contact these people, but not sure why they don't cash their checks.
Is it a significant amount?
No.
No.
Look on the back side
$78
of
on
the
the next page.
resolution. That was the part that,
Yeah.
we're talking big bucks there.
And what happens is this money will be put in a holding account, and then after 7 years, we can put it in the general fund.
Okay.
All that?
Yeah,
So we're looking for a motion to approve this.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Second by Orsh. Any other questions about it? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried.
And Dave's gonna sign it, and he's gonna hand it down the row, and when Dave gets it, I'll have it right here. Perfect.
Have you got the copy?
It's coming.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Okay.
Now it's my
Now,
turn.
yep.
And I, like Lori, put everything in your packets. The only thing that probably doesn't show up in your packet is the information regarding the Daniels Law that I have a note on, but it's not much, so. The report, it just shows from, at the bottom, the totals show what is in excess of the year 2020. So I'm just doing 2021 to 2020. So the revenue was a little bit higher, about 24,000. And for 2023 and the end of 2022, the bad news, interest rates are going up. So we aren't going to be as busy because everybody's not refinancing to try to get a lower rate. So I don't know how many of you went to the Wisconsin Counties Association meeting, but when I was at my last meeting in the fall, they had said that the Wisconsin Counties Association is asking the Department of Revenue for more of a cut of the transfer fees. If you see the transfer fees there, of that, the county gets 20% and the state takes 80%. So we passed a resolution to support the Wisconsin Counties Association to ask for more of a percentage because the state has this excess revenue right now. So we thought it was a good time to do it. So otherwise, they talked about the Daniels Law, and that was, what that is that where the judge's son was murdered, and now with Pulowski and all of these people that are getting hurt, that are, decision makers. So they're trying to get something for the privacy of the public record to shield it so that they can't find these people or find the people of, like the judges and probably the sheriff's department and some of those individuals that make decisions. And so our association's working very closely with our vendor, our land records vendor, with the real estate records. And I think they're working with the Wisconsin Counties Association also. So it affects not only our department, but several. It affects the county treasurer, Paul's office. It affects a lot of them. So hopefully all the associations are getting together to try to work something out so we can protect these people. Otherwise, that's about all I have. Any questions?
Hearing none, thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
Item 10, discussion action to abolish coroner position and implement a medical examiner system with a resolution to be dealt with.
Move for approval.
Do I have a second?
Just more discussion.
Need the second, then we discuss.
Right.
We can't discuss before? I guess not.
No, it's supposed to be motion and second.
And discussion and then,
Table or throw it out.
I'll second it then. Yeah.
okay, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Well, not yet.
Not for not for passing, but for discussing.
Well, that's what you just did. You made your motion and second, so now you're ready to discuss. You
Discuss,
don't have
okay,
to-
that-
Yeah.
I thought he was dividing it from
If somebody
discussion
want-
to action.
Somebody want to read it? You want to read it? Paul?
He's got
or
it.
Dave, you want to read it?
I don't want to, but I can. The title is Abolishing the Elective Office of Coroner and Creation of a Medical Examiner System. Whereas statute 59.20 creates a 4-year term for the office of coroner and the current coroner's term end in January 23. And whereas Wisconsin statute 5934 and 5938 allows the county board to create the position of medical examiner to perform the same duties as coroner, thereby abolishing the office of coroner. And whereas the county can establish minimum qualifications for a person employed as a medical examiner and ensure that the position is filled by a competent person. And whereas a medical examiner system can more effectively carry out the duties of Wisconsin's statute 59.34. And now therefore be it resolved that the Trempealeau County Board of Supervisors hereby abolishes the office of the coroner at the end of the current incumbent's term, and be it further resolved that the Trempealeau County Board of Supervisors creates the position of medical examiner to begin at the end of the current term of the coroner, which will be a standalone department of the county with its own budget and staff as approved by the county board. And be it further resolved that the Trempealeau County Law Enforcement / Emergency Management Committee shall continue as the oversight committee for the medical examiner department. And it was introduced by Law Enforcement Emergency Management Committee. Stacy Klein, Dan Schreiner, Ron Johnson, and the Personnel Bargaining Committee. Now we're open to discussion.
So I'll start. It's my understanding that we have not one, but two qualified candidates for the position that have put their name in the hat for election. Is that accurate?
Yep, 2 registered write-ins.
So it would be my opinion that the people of the county should vote and decide, based on who the qualified candidates are, whether they want to elect a coroner. Prior to the discussion that came up earlier this year on the coroner and the medical examiner position, there was no discussion on moving to a medical examiner because the coroner was in the position. So when the coroner said that she did not want to rerun, and it was open for quite some time with no candidates, that's when the discussion came up. So it would be, in my opinion, that we table this until the election and see what the results are, and if there's a qualified candidate, then we don't have to make that decision right now. It doesn't mean we don't down the road, but I think we should let the process take its course.
Okay. Any other comments? Discussion?
May I comment?
Mr. Miller?
As some of you know, I was in the other day and spoke to the matter. I was kind of out of turn. So to speak.
Yep.
And
Turn it on.
Either
I have to be-
asking for everything.
I have to be
aren't you?
instructed here. Thank you. Thank you. The other day, there was some discussion during the budget hearings, and in a sense, I spoke out of turn, perhaps, at that time. The nice thing about the code, the state code allows the counties to decide whether they want to appoint or hire someone to fill a position of this nature or elect. I guess I see it as an opportunity for the board to have a say in terms of who is qualified and who isn't. Unfortunately, electors don't always have that information. They should, and we should know these things, obviously, before we vote, but we oftentimes don't. But I guess as I see it, here is an opportunity, and I appreciate the fact that, David, you're saying we can revisit it. The question is, will we, and will it appear to be political at that time? We do have 2 candidates running, and the board indeed can and could make a decision to change that to a medical examiner. I'm not sure it would, anything that can appear political. But in a sense, we have 2 people of 2 different parties, as I understand, who have are signed up as write-in candidates. If the decision is made after someone is elected, will it appear political? And we don't want it to be political. We want to find the best person for the job, I think. But this is an opportunity, and I certainly appreciate David's comments on this. But I think the board could make a decision, and take it out of your hands here and simply let the board make this decision. But I guess that's it. thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
I would like to, Corp Council's done considerable research on this subject, so I would like to have Corp Council's comments.
Sure. Well, I don't have a ton to add than what's already been talked about. But yes, so if the board wants to proceed this route, that's the route that they go. I contacted the Wisconsin Elections Commission to find out what would happen if there is somebody elected at tomorrow's election. I have not heard back from them as of yet. It's been a few weeks, so I'll reach out to them again just to see where that stands. But ultimately, if this were, and let me back up, this is a multi-step process. This particular resolution is only the beginning. There's job descriptions that still need to be approved. There's the amount of pay or budget for a particular department. All of that still has to go through the proper process. The ultimate goal would be, is if this moves forward, is all of that would be in front of the county board in the December meeting to decide whether or not, and there you'll have numbers in regards to budgets and all that kind of stuff. We didn't want to put it off to Carlson Detman yet for an evaluation of the pay yet, because if the board chooses not to go forward with this, no sense in spending that money with Carlson Detman. So this is the first step in the process. There is still an opportunity for the board to decide not to pursue this, or this committee as well too can do the same. But that's just this is just one step in the whole process. So.
Only thing I would add is it's already gone through a law enforcement committee and personnel bargaining committee. So we're the last committee that would go through before county board.
So for the record, could we state who those candidates are who have put their name in?
Can I do that? 'Cause
As long as it's not.
campaigning. Yes, we got registered write-ins for David Anderson and Bonnie Kenchi.
So for the record, Bonnie Kenchi is our qualified coroner currently. Stands to reason that if people want her to be coroner and she's put her name in the hat, then they should be allowed to vote for her. And then that's exactly what the county has today. It seems to be, it would be a perfect solution. Or, you know, the other qualified candidate would have a voice. I think we should let the people talk.
I would tend to agree with Dave on this issue at this time, especially with the names that have been set in for, we've had a qualified person that has now decided to run for it again, plus competition, which is good. But at the same time, do we want to deny the other two committees the fact to go on for a county board vote, for a full board vote? Or can we delay this for now with the idea, okay, Paul?
Can I ask a question? Because this resolution is not going to county board until December.
Right.
So the election will be tomorrow and be decided in November. So how does that work?
So,
If we, the board meeting is until Thursday, right? So it's after the election. We should table this until then, and then it
I'm in total agreement with you, David, yes, yeah.
well, it would have to go back to us in December, and then come back to the December board.
That's kind of my
Okay.
question. One more time.
you please.
Because Rick, correct me, because exec finance will still have another exec meeting in the first part of December
Correct.
for the December meeting. So
Correct.
they could
Right.
table it for
Yes.
right now.
I'd make a motion then to table until the
December
next
meeting.
December meeting, and, you know, we can decide, you know, there's no difference between doing it now or doing it then.
Did you second that?
Then I'll second the
Okay,
table.
we have a motion and a second to table this until the December meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Tabled. Well, how could I lose a piece of paper sitting right here?
Resolution.
Oh, wow.
What are you looking for, Dave?
Oh, I had my agenda with the notes on it, along with the previous two before they were completed. Okay, Well, I'll use this one here. Item 11. Discussion action on debt service for 23 budget initial resolution from, there he is, Brian. Stuck to the bottom of that one. Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you and good morning. Again, Brian Riley with Ellers, for those I'm not as familiar with. And this shouldn't look that different from the last time we had this discussion, primarily just updated with where you stand from a capital budget perspective. If you recall, we would kind of talk through some potential level of refinement, especially as we get into the actual process more next year. But understanding also where you had been the last few years and where you likely wanted to be, you're also poised to then bring a recommendation potentially out of this committee and have what is called the initial resolution for borrowing really married up with approval of your budget. So then you've got an operating and capital budget approved by the board, as well as essentially the funding mechanism potentially being the issuance of debt to fund your capital projects. And so then in the next calendar or fiscal year, which are one and the same, there would be formal action items. I think we could probably revisit the borrowing again with this group, just for this is what things look like, this is where rates are at, this is the structure we've discussed, and that you're recommending ultimately to the board, and then proceed in that fashion. So I'll get to the calendar again, revisit that at the end. But just to kind of give you a high-level overview of our last discussion. So right now we're looking at $4.1 million roughly in capital projects. That's primarily roads and bridges, some nominal amounts for some other capital expenditures. I just talked about process here a little bit, but again, remember that initial resolution is not necessarily binding in that it's issuing debt, but it's providing an authorization that's required under law, in that one of the ways to proceed is with a 3/4 approval of the county board, which then opens the door to borrow under that authorization for a 5-year period. Again, just kind of looking at what your debt is outstanding presently, I'm on page 3 with the table that shows all of the individual debt issues that are presently outstanding and what their principal/maturity structure looks like. And this is really arriving at what do you have available to you under law. There is a limitation related to general obligation debt, and that is 5% of the county's total equalized value, which is just under $3 billion. Your authorized borrowing amount is $148.5 million plus a little. As of right now, as we get through the end of this fiscal year, your principal outstanding will be about $74.5 million, which leaves you with about $74 million of available borrowing capacity. That's right around half of what you have available under state law. All right, so you've ebbed and flowed over time in terms of how much you've had available, depending on what's been outstanding at any one time, as well as your total valuation, which has seen some meaningful increases the last number of years. But you can see then the last few years have been primarily borrowing for roads and bridges, as well as the Justice Center project. All right, and then prior to that, in 2015, the county did do a larger issue related to the healthcare center. And the debt service for the healthcare center debt from 2015 is 100% supported by that fund. No tax levy associated with that. So then the next page shows what the county is levying for debt service, and then what is the associated tax rate expressed in dollars per thousand of equalized value. We tend to look at things on an equalized basis because it's more consistent over time. It evens out a little bit for the county because a lot of the underlying jurisdictions aren't as volatile as they would be on their own when they change assessed value, go through revals, those sorts of things. So when you take the amount of debt service, let's say payable in 2023 at $3.75 million, and you measure that against the total tax base, that equates to a tax rate for debt service of about $1.32 per thousand. So when you look at your total levy And on a millage basis, you tend to look at that on an assessed value, I'm sure. But on an equalized value basis, out of your total tax rate, $1.32 is going to pay general obligation debt service. All right, so that levy amount is up from the prior period, and that, again, had much to do with the fact that there was some borrowing done that has an associated payment that comes due next year along with that. And so in 22, borrowing, now you're levying for that, and it's being put on the 22/23 tax rolls. And then you can see that we're fairly stable going out about 10 years, because that corresponds to the term of the most recent borrowing that was done for roads and bridges, and then there's a corresponding decline going from 32 to 33, all right, and then you're flat again, and so that largely had to do with the healthcare center being a 20-year financing and being substantial amount of debt service. So that had been planned kind of all along, and there was a structure that was envisioned. Any questions thus far? Comments?
Just a comment. As a board, we're going to be arguing over another $5 million next year, so, for hot roads. So that's going to change us again, if that's the case.
So this is
right?
current, and then we're going to look at, if you borrow the 4.1 million, what are some different structures? We talked about that a little bit, and then what are the associated impacts? And then we had talked a little bit about, what your thoughts were as you go forward. I personally like to have a bit of information on what your future might look like, because it informs me as to how I might want to be thinking about recommending a debt structure to you. But I don't absolutely have to have that information. So as far as the considerations go, you do have a maximum term to maturity of 20 years from the date of issue available to you for projects such as this. No general obligation debt can go longer than 20 years from its date of issue, regardless of how many times you may refinance it or extend it along the way. As we talked about before, you have a lot of latitude in terms of how you contemplate the debt structure. It does not have to be level annual payments of principal and interest over the life of the financing. We do have the opportunity to structure things that may better achieve what you see as your objectives related to both the levy and the tax rate. And we can also take advantage of some of those drops that we discussed, right? So 32 to 33 drops, and then again, I think in like 42, there's another drop. And I'll show you some how you might want to think about that, one of which is probably on the extreme end, but I just want to give you a flavor for what kind of flexibility you have. And then we'll revisit this discussion, I think, as we go to actually executing on financing, because we'll get a chance to revisit this. I can't tell you where interest rates are going to be at the time, and you'll also want to have some thoughts around what your budgets might look like as you go forward. So on page 6, we've done just that. We've set out various terms to maturity and a few different structures, just to give you a sense of what your options are. So the first one, top left, I tried to use some colors here so you could just plainly see, but a 5-year structure that gets you to a levy of about $4.7 million. So with interest, right, we're paying principal. This is a level payment schedule. You can see the purple bars result in level payments. That's going to bring the tax rate, and I'm assuming no increases in value. So I'm holding your value constant. So that's going to assume we go from a tax rate of about $1.32 per thousand to $1.66 per thousand at a levy amount of about $4.7 million. So that's going to require us to pay about $1 million a year in debt service. And we do have a little bit of margin over current rates, understanding that you would borrow in the next calendar year. There's some uncertainty there. Then if we extend it a little further, we say 10 years, total term to maturity. What we've done here is we've gone from a level payment structure to a little bit of a hybrid approach where we've taken advantage of the decline in debt service going from 32 to 33. Right? We're going to move forward into 2023. If we go 10 years, our final payment would be in 2033. And so while we're level for the first 9 years, we've also taken advantage of the drop or the decline going from 32 to 33. So we've decreased the amount of principal coming due in the first 9 years and then increased it in the 10th year. And all of these are set out numerically on the next page too. If you want to flip back and forth, that's up to you. That does reduce our annual debt service about $500,000 a year. There's a cost to that, and it's called interest, because we got more principal coming due in the back end of the structure. We'll look at that here and measure that in a moment. But if you wanted to achieve something like this, it would also help mitigate the tax impact, right? Because instead of $1.66 per thousand tax rate for debt service, now we're at $1.48 per thousand, all right? But again, there is no free lunch. In order to achieve this, you have to have more principal coming due at the end, which means more interest expense in total. And then the other extreme would be you've got 20 years, if you wish, to amortize this debt. We could take an approach where essentially we go interest only the whole time, which I'm not recommending, but I'm just giving you a sense as to what you could achieve. You can see where we've got a decline in debt service from 32 to 33. We could fill in with those gaps there. Or we could go to another extreme and just say, put all the principal at the end, because you could do that. And in that case, the interest alone takes you from a tax rate of about $1.32 per thousand to $1.43, so about 10 cents per thousand. So again, I'm not necessarily stating that you should do this, but you do have the ability to achieve this sort of structure. So it's really a function of where do you want to see the tax impact and what are you comfortable with in terms of the term to maturity. The shorter the term, the higher the debt service, because you're amortizing it more rapidly. So understand that there are options available, and there are also costs associated with that. All right, then again, just numerically, it's taking those various structures and setting them out into a payment schedule for you to kind of just peek at quickly and see also kind of where we're right now seeing interest rates. Again, we've got about a 1/4 point of margin over current rates. And then just to see the interest differential based upon these various structures. So going from 5 years to 10 years with a graduated schedule is about another $585,000 in interest. And then again, if you went from the 5 years to the kind of more extreme schedule where essentially we put all the principal in the back end, that costs another $2.8 million in interest. So again, not necessarily we're recommending that because it does come at high cost to achieve that. There are other viable options that are in between as well that you could achieve. And so understand that the term of this debt won't necessarily, say, impact your rating. So your choices around structure aren't going to really have a material impact on how you look as a credit. It's more about what your point of view is on if you're going to move forward with capital financing, what's the tax impact going to look like then, and what's your level of comfort going from 23 then to 24. All right. So again, maybe I'll just pause here because the last page closes us out, and just through some conversation, and I don't want to speak out of turn here, but it sounds like there may be some thoughts around how to proceed with future road and bridge capital costs and associated financing, and again, that kind of plays into how I think about things because ultimately, try to find ways so that you're not operating in a vacuum, and obviously any debt has an associated payment most generally in the next fiscal period, and so I don't want to see a situation where we're kind of stacking on top and on top and on top. If we have a little bit of opportunity for some structuring, or I understand where you're going for the foreseeable future, I can always take that into consideration too, and then show you some options around that and allow you to try to make some informed decisions. So that's what I have for prepared material, and I will just pause there and certainly answer questions or address any comments.
Brian, thank you. This is really well laid out. I appreciate it. On page 3, does this include any of the new building for courthouse?
Yeah, so the Justice Center, that's the 2021 issue, $43.4 million.
Okay.
That's included in this in these calculations. So that was a 20-year financing. We had a very large drop in debt service going from one year to the next. So understanding that was coming, we structured debt service to allow for that to be largely tax neutral, right? So even though we had a large capital financing coming on, the levy for debt service was kind of already thought of in a way that allowed that to be taken on without causing a large increase in taxes.
So you mentioned earlier that you cannot restructure, or you can restructure within that 20-year period, or?
There's I don't have it written on here, and it's not top of mind, but there is what's called a call date on that debt. So right now, you'd be locked out from prepayment. So in about year 8 or 9, so let's say around 2030, you have the ability to prepay or otherwise refinance that issue at face value. And so if refinancing is a viable opportunity, we would try to target that and try to execute on the earliest possible time. Or it could be restructured if you didn't want to refinance for savings. So you could do that, but in no case can you extend the debt longer than 20 years from its original date of issue.
It's just worth noting for the committee, if you notice every year, every one of these goes up. So our payments.
That's just the principal amount, though. So when you include interest, it looks different from a payment perspective. So if we were to take that 21 issue and I showed you the principal and the interest, it would look like a level payment structure. But for purposes of calculating your limitation for borrowing, the state only considers principal. It does not care about interest from a maximum borrowing capacity
So
perspective.
this is stating the principal that we're paying off in the loan every year?
Correct.
Got it, okay. That's helpful.
Your levy for debt service is unlimited by rate or amount. And so there is no statutory maximum under law for general obligation debt. There is only a limitation on how much in principal you have outstanding at any one time.
So this includes everything that's out there right now. So for
Correct.
our committee's perspective, if we're going to layer in anything else as we go,
I don't,
so when it comes to the plans, the different ones, Brian, you laid out, really the difference is total output that we have to pay out in interest because of the length of the structure.
Generally, yes. These are just kind of easy milestone markers, 5, 10, 20. I mean, you could go 7, you could go 15, you could go 12, right? I like to look at it from the perspective, if I look at your debt service and it's all here, you could also reference page 4. But you can see where there are some natural declines, and then those become some opportunities to kind of filter in debt service and have a larger payment in that year. So that's a philosophical thing, and it's entirely at your purview how you want to structure the debt. So I thought maybe just showing you 5 years, level payments, there's one thing you can pay mind to. If you go to 10 years, you do have that one decline built in there, and maybe you want to take advantage of that. You don't have to. We could do it level for 10 years. It's going to cause the first year's payment to be a little higher in order to achieve that, which is okay too. So the associated tax impact would be mildly higher. So it just kind of give you a visual and a sense of what could be achieved. The 20-year structure doesn't have to look like that. We could certainly take advantage of the decline going from 32 to 33 and then layer in principal to fill that gap, so to speak, and kick those ones up, and you probably have it paid off well in advance of 20 years. So this can all get fine-tuned, but that's something to probably have a discussion around when we have a higher level of certainty as to where something like where's interest rates at, because it's only maybe a 2-month process after this committee says go until we have something in front of the board that would be binding and would set the payment terms at that point in time.
Was there any thought process in taking our run rates over the previous 10 years of other bonds that have been paid off that, we're going to have recurring that are going to come up and we're going to have to layer in to the structure because we know we're going to have other things we're going to have to put in? Was there any analysis done on a prediction, so to speak, based on past trend?
The last time we went through an effort of really looking forward in time was understanding that the Justice Center project was coming together as far as more tangible and much more highly likely. So knowing that this committee and the Highway Department and the Highway Committee had kind of mapped out a plan of doing roughly $5 million, then we took a purposeful approach to how we structured the road and bridge financing and the other capital projects that were sprinkled in with that. and built amortizations to allow for the Justice Center, for when the debt was issued, that when the first payment came due, that it would be largely tax neutral. We don't have control over interest rates, but we caught a good time, so that was nice. But we put more thought into how we were structuring the debt at that point in time, looking out over about a 3-ish year period at that stage. And so building these, I would have a sense that, yes, you would borrow again at some point in the future, but as far as what that looks like, I don't have a clear vision of that. If you threw some things at me in terms of, hey, we know we've got this cost coming up in the next 5 years, it'll probably be funded with debt. That can all be built in here from a forecasting perspective, but I don't have that information.
Yeah, so for the committee, I mean, we have to do our due diligence. You know, the other board members have made it clear that we need a plan, and I totally agree. For example, I mean, we're giving the sheriff a lot of money to support the communication system. We probably knew 10 years ago that was coming, right? This board didn't, but other boards did. There's other things that are probably coming up that maybe we can look back in history and say, okay, you know, we tend to spend money on these types of things over the course of history. We need to look at what those things are that are going to come up and layer it into here, because if we take this one approach, you know, say on the top left, which gets us a really good payoff quickly and reduce the amount of interest that we're paying, okay, now we got another $5 million project that, oops, nobody thought about.
Right.
And hey, we got roads, right? And
Yes.
we know we don't want to keep, borrowing, $10 million every year for roads. But you know what? Next year, and the next year, and the next year, when we're having a high payoff, what are we going to do? Not build any roads? So I think it behooves us to look back, Paul, in our budget and say, where have we historically spent money, and where do we need to, layer some of that in? Because we may not want to do that top left approach, depending on what's coming. Granted, interest rates are, right now, we don't know where they're going to be in another year, whereas 2-3 years ago, we were pretty, hey, interest rates are low and they're going to stay that way. So I don't know what ability, Paul, we have to look back in the past by committee or by infrastructure spend and say, you know what, we historically spend X amount in these categories.
I can look that up, but most of the things are going to be the roads and bridges and the sheriff's vehicles. And once in a while, a capital project with the maintenance department, that's basically what we've been borrowing every year.
Yeah, no doubt,
for.
we're gonna spend more money on the Justice Center after it's done. We're like, oh, we didn't think about that, or we didn't think about this, it's gonna happen.
What you have right now, the capital equipment is actually probably a fairly nominal proportion of what had been borrowed in the last few years. And I think the biggest year might have been like $600,000 or $700,000, Paul, going back a little ways.
Yeah, probably. Yep.
So it's going to be largely comprised of, obviously, the Justice Center is the vast majority, but then it's the road and bridges has been the bulk of what's been borrowed for the last 3 to 5 years, I would say.
So it shouldn't take us very long to figure that out. And then we have to decide by when. You said it takes 2 months to be able to put that structure together?
So this is kind of a phased approach, right? So there's not much, if you approve let's just think about it from the budget perspective, right? If you're looking at, well, we intend to spend this much on roads and bridges, and then I think there was like 1 or 2 capital items as far as the equipment goes in the borrowing as well. And so that's what our budget states. The borrowing amount won't be affected by what happens to interest rates or whether or not you want to do a 5-year structure or a 10-year structure. The size of the financing won't be impacted by that. So from an intent standpoint, as you align the funding side of your budget, so you'd have your budget, you'd approve that right in the levy for 22, collect 23. The borrowing would occur in 23. So the initial authorization essentially puts in front of the board a resolution stating its intent, and then by law, there's really 2 ways to authorize debt, one of which is a 3/4 vote of the full board. So if 3/4 of the board votes in the affirmative, you've essentially authorized that debt to be issued anytime in the next 5 years from the date of the resolution. So then intention would be to come back as you functionally need money, right, to get prepared for your capital projects, then come back to this group for probably one or maybe two last discussions, however you see fit. Come to you, give you an update on where things stand, and then better define what you want the structure to look like at that point, or we could have a more fundamental discussion along the way. But the borrowing amount itself, the total amount, would have already been authorized. And so as we proceed into the next fiscal year, it's about refinement, and then there's a lot of sausage making that has to go on behind the scenes in terms of putting documents together and actually going out to access the capital. That all happens once we get your imprimatur on the structure, what you want it to look like. Then we kind of put things, chisel them out in stone, so to speak, as we move forward at that point. That part of the process does take about 2 months. So in between now and say, late winter, early spring, happy to discuss with you as much as you'd like from both a planning perspective. If you have capital projects that you're envisioning over the next 3 to 5 years, once you get beyond that, unless you know something's going to say be mandated, beyond that, it gets a little fuzzier and harder to plan around. But we could take that into consideration, map out some capital planning in that regard, and then you could decide on what you want the final debt structure to look like as we lead up to the point in time where you physically need the money to pay for material, that sort of thing. So between you saying go, right, this is what we want it to look like, this is our recommendation to the board, if you want the board to revisit it at all, given that they've already really authorized the borrowing amount, you could give them an informational update at that point, because there's really nothing left to vote on until you get to the final resolution. And so between you saying we like this is where we're headed, then that's about a 2-month process to put the whole thing together, sell the debt, have it come before the board for a final resolution that sets the terms and the payment structure, and then close a few weeks later. That's what would transpire after.
So that all has to be done after the Justice Center is completed, October next year?
You don't necessarily have to take anything into consideration as far as the Justice Center. So if the funding is to provide the resources for your road and bridge projects, you'd want to align when do we need the money so that we can pay for materials and whatever else you need to functionally build your infrastructure. When do we need that cash to make that happen?
And that's usually about April or May is when the highway department will start construction again.
In the meantime, they bought materials.
So the bottom line is that we've got to sit down with Highway again and find out where that's going. We really do, don't we? If you're going to need $4 million a year, we've got to decide that. I don't agree with that, but I guess somebody has to tell me before we can move forward with our thinking here, right? You agree?
Yeah.
I definitely have Al coming to the budget.
On Thursday?
County Board meeting Thursday.
Paul, you had something else?
I was just going to mention that during the budget process this time, Highway, through the budget, agreed to drop to $4 million this time.
Yep.
But he did say that next time around, he wants it back up at 5. Unless it's going to go the other way.
Any other questions?
I guess we have the information. I have what I'm thinking now, but I guess we can decide at a different time as long as we have good information here.
And I'm at the half question point. I'm not sure how to ask what I'm thinking, so that'll be another time.
I'll find the intent last time, and it's at your purview, right? So the intent last time was to potentially have a resolution come before the board, I think at your December meeting, that would provide the authorization to issue. And so that's entirely up to you, but I suspect that would require a recommendation out of this body, and then again, behind the scenes, your bond approving attorney would draft up the resolution to that effect and provide agenda language for that meeting. That's not required, but it would align with you adopting your budget as well. I know last time there was a little bit of displeasure in that the incoming board was then required to vote and approve of financing that was really needed because in the capital budget that was approved in the year prior, it was assumed that the county would proceed with roughly $5 million plus in road and bridge projects, and a lot of that work had already been moved forward on, right, in terms of orders and outlays and the reimbursement needed to occur.
So our next meeting is going to be what, the 5th of
5th
December?
December. Is that soon enough to get the paperwork in and resolution done?
We can get the attorneys prepped well in advance, and so I wouldn't have any, there's no concern. I mean, I think we talked again, Paul and I talked, and I know you have a board meeting coming this week, and we could have gotten that all kind of ready to hit send if you had provided a recommendation, but that just seemed a little premature and too short of a window, and not the best idea, so we wanted.
Kind of decided not to
Right.
December.
When's the board meeting in December?
5th.
19th.
No, the board meeting is the 19th. Yeah.
19th.
Anything else here? No. Are you asking for something from this committee today?
Not necessarily. If you want to have something on your December agenda
Okay.
that provides for the initial authorization of the issuance of debt, so essentially have the board pass off on a resolution that authorizes the subsequent issuance of the debt to fund the capital projects that you approve in your budget. If you want all that to align, then at some point, based upon how things have been done in the past and your overall structure, a recommendation would come out of this body to put that on to a subsequent county board agenda. And again, we're only talking about the size of the issue. Nothing in that resolution will talk about what the structure looks like, other than generally, there's a distinction between what are called promissory notes and bonds, and promissory notes being anything with 10 years or less to final maturity, and bonds being up to 20. So there might be a little bit of distinction in the language, but there's nothing prohibitive from going one way or the other, frankly. So again, it's just more about how you want to comport yourselves in terms of approving a budget, which includes capital costs, and how you want to look at the board also essentially passing off on issuing the debt to fund your capital. So essentially you'd have this board doing all of that, and then when you actually issue the debt is, again, at your discretion, in which we've largely tried to align with the point in time where money is needed to pay the bills.
So we need those numbers from the budget, right?
Paul?
I was just going to say, the budget that's being presented on Thursday has those figures in it already. Planning on borrowing,
Yeah.
the way you are presenting it. So the $4,140,000 is in your budget right now.
Yep.
Another question, do we need Brian here on Thursday? No?
No, because we're not gonna do the initial on Thursday. We would probably do it in December. And then we'd have about 2 months to,
So you're going to be able to explain to the full board why it's in the budget on Thursday without Brian?
how's that going, Brian?
I have full confidence that you're able to do that, Paul, but your budget won't be final at that point, correct?
Yeah.
You're looking to pass off on it?
You'll be adopting it on
Okay.
Thursday.
All right.
Yep.
That-
With this
Ask-
borrowing
Right,
in it.
for next year.
Right.
The
For next
borrowing
year,
will
yes.
happen until at least after the first of the year.
Next year's payment isn't gonna change.
Correct.
No, since we borrow in '23, our
Right.
first payment will be due in '24, so it'll go on our '24
So
budget.
there shouldn't be a problem. Correct?
Just an
For
aside
that,
here.
for that
I
year.
think Sam said she put this on everybody's desk, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I've got it.
If
It's
you've
in the
got that-
It's in the packet.
that-
I look at it two ways, I guess. It's
So-
true that there's no corresponding debt payment for your capital financing that you're doing, for the capital projects that you're doing in '23, but they are a part of your budget, right? So you're going to make those outlays, but there's not additional debt service associated with them, and it is accurate to state that the debt is intended to be issued in '23 with the first payment in '24. So to some degree, it's how do you approach your capital budget, right? And the intent, kind of going back to the last round of financing that we did in '22, was to say, if the board is going to approve a budget with a capital plan that assumes financing is required in '23, let's also have them essentially authorize the borrowing. It doesn't make it final, and you could never approve that if you didn't want to, albeit that would be problematic because now you've got the highway department who's going to start to execute on the plan that you put into place as a result of your budget. So trying to close the gap in time between approving your budget and also authorizing the capital financing that would fund your capital projects as tightly as possible. So then a December approval or authorization would, pretty well align with that, understanding that as we move into '23, if you wanted to go through the discussion on the capital planning exercise, we can show you all kinds of different options, alternatives. Hey, you want to borrow $5 million next year or not, or $5 million in a subsequent year, and we know we have some other costs that we're going to have to outlay in such and such year. We can map all that out and show you approaches around that. But then at some point, yes, you would need to engage in the financing to get the money to pay for the project that was approved. But all that would transpire in '23.
Our 2014 issue, our last payment is in '24. And I think, keep this in your mind, I was thinking that it's callable, so we could pay off with general fund money that payment and then replace it with this one.
Possibly. I like numbers right in front of my eyeballs to make those sorts of decisions. So I need to see what's the interest rate on the last maturity? Is it higher or lower than what you could potentially just invest the money at or borrow new money at, right? So I tend to want to do a little bit of analysis.
Yes.
Just for information, Paul, we at one point we used to borrow 1 year and pay it back right away the next year.
We did that with state trust fund
So
loans.
basically, we've just got 2 years now where we borrowed and we got long-term on the highway debt, basically. Two borrowings that are on highway debt extended out 5 years, right?
I think we got more than that.
Yeah,
think it's three.
the 19 and the 20 both had road and bridge
The
projects
19,
in them,
20,
and the 22.
and our 22.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
So you can see where
So there's
the,
three times. Other than that, we were paying it back the next year,
But we were only borrowing about
just over $1 million.
2 million, 2.5 million, something
Yeah.
like that was all we were borrowing. Then we put it on the levy and we paid it all back, and we only paid, less than $10,000 in interest.
Which was good, but the state didn't like that because.
Well, yeah, I'll go one step farther. The interest on the state trust fund loans is turned around and given to the schools. So if we didn't pay any interest, the schools didn't get much money on that borrowing anyway. It's kind of an odd, but that's how the interest on the state trust fund loans is paid to the schools.
some of it.
Oh. It's spread over the whole state. That too.
This is true as well. So as far as an ask goes, getting back to your original question, that part is up to you, right? If you wanted to act and give a recommendation to proceed with preparing that authorizing resolution that would come before the board in December, you can do that. You don't have to do that. It's entirely up to you. And again, I just try to describe it from a philosophical and budgetary perspective. You could also meet again prior to that December meeting and revisit this, but generally speaking, a recommendation has come out of this body in order to put a borrowing-related agenda item in front of the full board.
In December.
In any time, but December would be your next opportunity in this fiscal year. And again, if the notion was if you adopt a total budget that includes the notion of borrowing as a source of funds, then aligning that with an authorization from the board that basically puts them on record as saying, we intend to borrow enough to fund our capital budget in the next fiscal year.
So in that case, we should actually either approve or disapprove this today. Because it's gonna come on the budget one way or the other.
It would look nicer on paper.
Any other comments on that? That's right. My thought process, as I was listening, was leaning towards needing to do something here today to get it to the agenda.
Yeah, I don't know if you're meeting again. I'm sure you've been meeting a ton, so I'm not asking you to. I'm just saying if, you would have, if you met again before that, you would have the opportunity, but barring that, if this is the only time you're going to meet before December, then.
We have a meeting in early December, but is that, Paul, quick enough then to get it to the full board in
It's
December?
actually 14 days before the.
That's all. Don't worry about anybody around you from a professional's perspective. We'll get it done. I can guarantee you that. But I would think about it more just practically speaking from your function within the governance structure, right? How do you want to align yourselves with potential adoption of the budget as a whole, right? Both the operating and capital side. And so whether you go on record now as you're approaching the near, we're very close to the date where you would consider your budget for approval, or wait till after that is entirely up to you. I don't have discretion over that, so I'm more of an order taker in that regard.
Okay. Thoughts from out there? Do you want to let it sit and let it ride till the December meeting, or do you want to try to do something today?
But personally, I think if we're either approving or disapproving the budget on Thursday?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what's,
And this is already on the budget, I think we either, as the committee, we either gotta do it now or even if we don't do anything.
right, what's the number? And it's not changing, right?
$4,140,000.
But when we borrow, though, we got to gross it up for cost. So if you're going to come on record as saying we're intending to borrow for a not-to-exceed amount, I would use something like 4.3 million. It'll be inside of that, but I always tend to aim high and then come below. Just always much easier. You don't have to do anything over in those regards. So I would establish a not-to-exceed amount, knowing that you're funding both your project costs, but as well as the fees and expenses associated with issuing the debt.
My question would be, if we make some sort of approval for this 4.23 today here, and we get to full board and something happens at full board that's not the number that gets passed, does that cause any issue? For example, if 4.2 and at full board there becomes a motion with a vote to reduce that number, does what we do here today then become affected with you, or
Well,
make it
that's
harder, or?
That's an authorization at a subsequent board meeting that can be changed. So nothing is truly carved into stone
Okay.
until the final resolution comes before the board, and it's an up or down vote. We're gonna borrow this money or not.
Okay,
Because
okay.
we've taken proposals, and there's a purchase price in front of you with interest rates, and everything's locked in. You can still say yes or no at that point, but a subsequent meeting of the board, you could increase the number. I'm not sure you could invalidate the resolution, you would just let it expire, right? But you could change things after that
Okay.
as well.
And this resolution would only be a not to exceed.
Right, yeah.
So if we did the 4.3 and we only come in with 3.9,
You can do less,
Borrowing?
absolutely.
Okay.
And we will have it itemized out, right? But with that total.
The resolution itself will actually say this much for roads and bridges and this much for capital equipment.
I
That
mean,
part won't happen until December.
right. But we would just be bringing the total the total numbers coming before the board on this agenda with the request to approve the budget.
Right.
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 So we should have discussion at then and saying, we're gonna get you the details of that in December.
Correct.
Which we will then have another subsequent meeting that says, Brian's gonna bring us a structure as to how we're going to put that together over the long term.
Right.
So that next discussion, you're saying, we'll just do that at the December meeting without Brian?
That would be the initial resolution.
Correct.
And you probably would be
That's up
present
to
for
you.
that.
If you want me to be a part of that, all you have to do is ask, of course.
Or we want some information for you?
Mr. Miller?
All fine.
Oh, just,
I think it's definitely helpful to the full board when
Yep.
you're here. It makes a big difference. All right, I'm inclined to make a motion that we bring before the full board the motion that we borrow that not to exceed the $4.3 million. Could be a significant number less than that, but
okay. We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Now discussion, and Mr. Miller, you can make your comment.
Okay, my question is, and I was unclear, when this comes to the board, assuming it's approved today, if it comes to the board at the meeting this coming Thursday?
December.
no, it'll come Thursday,
No,
really.
Thursday.
Oh, Thursday for the budget,
Yeah.
but this
Budget.
resolution won't be,
Okay. but the-
authorizing won't be till December.
Okay, the question I have is that not going to be broken down in terms of how that money's going to be spent?
Yes.
It is
Yeah,
in the
that's what you
budget.
said. That's what I asked him a second ago, is that gonna itemize that 4.3? How does that itemize out? That will be broke out in the budget, and we'll have discussion on that.
Okay, well, I was unclear because there was some discussion that followed that kind of led me to believe that that wouldn't happen until December. And I think we have to know that
Yep.
before we vote as part of the whole budget.
In the budget, it'll have the 4 million for the highway and 140,000 for the sheriff.
So
Is what it's gonna
every
show
other
in the
committee
budget.
had submitted and talked about their budget, so each committee should know what's in there. Now we get to talk about collectively as a whole, hey, by the way, if you haven't read it, here's what it is.
But
And then-
Paul, you're suggesting it will be broken down in terms of how many cars or how many this and that?
Oh, I don't know about that part. No.
I
Your
guess I-
replacement is usually what, 4 to 5?
Yeah, it's between 4 or 5 depending on cost and which car
So,
we're getting.
but
the
it's a
director
dollar
is going to
figure of
be-
140,000.
Are the directors gonna be at that meeting?
The directors.
All of the directors of the county, so that they can, you can ask questions about that, they can help answer those
He's
questions.
talking about department heads.
Department heads,
I'm
okay.
sorry.
Yep, okay.
Well, I guess I would, it's
Well,
important.
you'll be there, because you're on, yeah.
Because the budget itself contains a breakdown of what each expenditure is, and I think it's good for us to know what is falling under this capital amount.
A good example, I mean, it's gonna be vehicles, it's not gonna say 4
Right.
Ford Explorers.
Probably not.
Yeah, Right.
But I think we need to know that,
And same with highway, it'll say $4 million.
but it's not gonna break it
But
down any
Al
further
will
than
probably
that.
say, oh, I'll use 200,000 for bridges and the other 3.8 for roads.
There
And
may
he
even
should
be
then
more
explain-
breakout than that. He does have specific stretches of specific highways designated for this money.
Yeah, I think that's important to know that.
Yeah, I do too, I think that's no reason why the department heads can't be at that meeting.
Oh,
We should
no,
make
they
sure
sh-
that they're there, and,
There's times they're called in, you know.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, Ben.
because
Thanks.
to Mr. Miller's point, we may decide as a full board, that's too much, we need to cut it back.
So, okay, we have a motion and a second. Do you have the wording of it written down? Can you repeat it for us? Okay.
It's the initial resolution.
Right.
Yep.
Any other questions now? If not, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign? Okay.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Brian.
Okay.
Item 14.
Yep, getting there. Item 14, discussion action regarding various parcels of currently subject to tax foreclosure by county and corporate council. Rick Niemeyer, where'd he go?
Yeah, you had me put that on.
He's got a big packet right there, so I don't know.
He had some other stuff going on, and he didn't realize it. Oh, here he is.
You're on.
Wait as long as possible. Assume this is in regards to the parcels of property for the tax foreclosure. I just put together just a little brief thing for everybody to look at. So occasionally there are parcels within the county that this committee has to decide whether or not to move forward with tax foreclosure on. So there are 3 parcels, and they're all in this packet. All of the parcels are road right-of-ways. And so it's a matter for this committee to decide whether or not to move forward with foreclosing on them, knowing that once we take ownership, they really aren't going to be sold. And so it would just be something that the county would hold on to, won't get any tax paid for it. They really aren't right now anyhow. So, but again, it's a decision that the committee needs to make, not something that Lori or I would make. There have been other times where this committee has decided not to proceed with a tax foreclosure on particular parcels. Again, there are other right-of-ways that the Executive Finance Committee has decided in the past not to proceed on. There are others where there might be some kind of a environmental hazard or something on the property that is not in the county's best interest to take it by tax foreclosure. So these are 3 relatively small parcels that are listed as delinquent, eligible for tax foreclosure, and it's a matter of whether or not this committee wants to authorize moving forward with it or basically just let them sit as is. These parcels were not transferred when the current owner took possession of them, and that owner does not want them.
They're basically road and ditch anyway.
Yes, they are. I think the delinquent taxes on all of these is somewhere in the ballpark of $60.
So if they don't want them, you're saying the county just takes possession?
We don't have to. Normally we would when someone doesn't pay their taxes, but if this committee decides that there's not a benefit to the county in taking these, those delinquent taxes will continue to sit there. The current owner will continue to own them. We just wouldn't proceed on foreclosing on them.
So if that current owner decided to sell, they'd still be part of that parcel. Whoever bought the land would have to pay those taxes.
Correct, if they were ultimately sold, which it might be a tough sell because of the fact that the right-of-ways, but again, too, it certainly is a possibility.
Also, if it gets to be over 10 years, then we have to write off the taxes.
Good point. Mhm.
How long has it been?
This would be 3 years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What's been precedent?
We do have other parcels where they are just right-of-ways, where this committee has decided not to proceed with tax foreclosure.
Have we ever decided to take foreclosure?
Not since I've been here, but I can't speak beyond that, so,
I don't remember if we have taken road right away.
yeah. Like I said, not in the last 5.5 years since I've been here.
What's the total dollar amount we're talking about here? Maybe I'm missing it here.
Yeah, and but that probably doesn't have it on there. Right now, from the 3 years ago period, it's $62.40 are the delinquent taxes.
All 3 parcels?
Correct, that's a combination of all 3 total. Mhm. Correct.
So.
It's not a huge
just
dollar
not
amount.
Do anything, right? And it goes back to the,
The landowner would continue to own it and continue to owe the taxes, correct?
Except in 7 years,
10 years.
10 years. and
well,
we-
there's already been 3 gone, right?
Right.
Oh, sure.
So 7 more
Mhm.
years.
Yeah.
Mhm. And it'll be a running total, because every year
So then
they.
you hope that somebody buys it and has to pay that tax, then, right? Is that what we're thinking?
No, I'm just saying in 7 years, we have we're gonna have, somebody's gonna have another decision to make.
And keep in mind, it'll be a cumulative, because every year they don't pay, so next year we'll have then the previous 3-year term. So this'll be, if you make the decision today not to proceed on it, we don't have to come back every year, I don't believe. I think it's just an automatic standing until decided otherwise. And
When will we hear back again or decide, hey, we
It's up
want
to
to,
you.
Correct.
how did this come to us now?
It's just eligible now for the tax foreclosure on the 2019 taxes.
So if we decide not to do anything, nobody will ever remember that this happened.
Oh, yeah, it'll be on the record.
Seven
Lori
years
will
from
know
now,
whoever's
7
federal.
years from now, it will go into the whatever oblivion, and no one will ever know that these taxes weren't paid.
Every year
You will know.
every year that Lori sends me the list of tax foreclosures, it includes the ones that this committee has previously decided not to proceed on. So she does keep record of it, and so we do know each year which ones we're not proceeding on. So we do keep track of it in that form, so.
I don't like the idea of just letting somebody slide on,
No,
what
I
they
agree.
If you look at-
$60, come on, pay your $60 and we move on.
Yeah, why don't they?
If you look at the parcels, basically, they're just road. They're Highway 21, the biggest portion of it is Highway 121, and then you have another big portion of Highway 121.
No, it's all of the right-of-ways, I agree. If nobody paid
Not only
their
the right-of-ways,
taxes on
it's the
all the
actual road
right-of-ways
itself.
that they own in this county, we would be out thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
I know, I got stopped years ago for riding my four-wheeler down the right-of-way, and the state trooper pulled me over and says, "You can't ride it here." I said, "It's my damn land, I pay the taxes on it, I'll ride it." And he said, "No, you gotta ride it out in that field there." I said, "I'll shoot the first son of a bitch I catch running through my cornfield." And he said, "No, you won't." I said, "Try me," But he finally let me go. I had cattle in the cornfield. I was trying to get a fence fixed. I was not in a good mood at the time.
I mean, basically, rule of law says they need to pay their taxes. I would not want to be on this committee and say, we're going to not follow the rule of law. Again, if we all own property, we own right-of-ways, we pay the taxes on those right-of-ways. $60 doesn't seem to me like it's gonna break anybody's bank. You can't even fill up your tank of gas these days with $60, so. I think we should move to foreclose if he's not gonna pay the $60, because I guarantee when he gets that letter, he will pay his $60 and this will be over.
I don't think so.
I think Lori's been in contact with them, and they
Yeah.
are
Lori
saying
shook
they
her
don't
head
want
and
it.
The person that owns this right away is not the person that owns the land behind it.
Right. I think it's actually Pat owns the land now, right?
Pardon?
Pat owns the land now? Walsky? Or is
No,
it
his-
still Larry?
His sister does.
Oh, okay.
Lisa.
Oh, okay.
So they can pay the taxes, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, she
Well-
could, but probably won't.
They could, yeah, If they don't own it, they probably won't.
It was supposed to have been transferred, but it never was, and so the person's saying that they don't want it, so.
We have some attorneys that don't want to transfer road right-of-ways. I don't know why.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable.
It happens quite a bit that somebody screwed up on when they rewrote the deeds. and stuff.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Miss a parcel.
So I'm trying to understand, the person that bought the property had the right-of-way eliminated from their title to property?
Never had it written in.
It wasn't included in the legal description for whatever reason. Mhm.
But they own it.
Yeah.
The
Was-
previous person owns it.
The previous person still owns that parcel, and they're the ones that aren't
Right.
paying.
So the current record
I
owner.
think I tend to agree with Dave that one way or the other, if they aren't,
Okay,
unless there's something in that right-of-way that we don't want to have any part of.
So let's think about this, okay? So they haven't paid their taxes, they don't want the property. What happens when someone doesn't pay the taxes on the property that they even are on, right? They lose that property. So if we foreclose on it, They're saying, great, now take it away from me. I don't want the property. Okay, now we've legally foreclosed.
Yeah.
We could offer it up for sale, which no one's gonna buy, but at least we did the right thing. I mean, it sounds crazy, but we're following the law.
Correct. It would be unlikely that it would be offered for sale just because of the roadway,
Because
but,
no one's gonna want it.
Correct,
But
right,
at
but I
least we
understand what you're
followed the
saying.
law.
Right.
And, okay, they were foreclosed on because they didn't legally
because that's how we normally
make
would,
sure that it was transferred appropriately.
right, because that's how we would normally recoup our
They should go back to
costs.
their lawyer and say, you owe defamation of character or something, I don't know, but.
Is this something the Register of Deeds office should have caught before it ever got to this point? I mean,
No, they don't search for that.
No.
No.
The lawyer should have made sure that that was included when the title company went and
Right.
did all their,
Title company should
Right.
have caught it.
Right.
The seller's lawyer.
right. So they could go after them if they wanted to, but the point is, it needs to be on record that we did the right thing and we followed appropriate rules and laws.
Okay, what's the right thing?
We're foreclosing on it and they're not gonna pay it, so then the county owns it and then it just sits in perpetuity forever and ever.
Are you making that a
Well,
motion?
it would be my opinion that unless you're choosing to not foreclose on it, you wouldn't have to take action because our normal process would be is to do the foreclosure. So I would say only do a motion if you were saying not to do the foreclosure. Because otherwise we just follow our normal procedure.
Can I just
Okay.
mention
Paul?
one thing? If it stays on the tax roll where it is right now,
Right.
it's going to be calculated into our tax every year,
Mhm.
and then they're never going to pay it.
It'll continue to grow.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's,
So it'd be nice to get.
it's
rid
better
of
to
It would be
take it,
just like
take
any
it.
other-
So it'd be
Take
up
it.
to you to do whatever.
Correct, yeah, we have our normal procedures we would follow when we do a foreclosure. Yeah,
It'd be no different than any other land that the county owns that they're not getting taxes on.
correct. Mhm.
Except if you don't foreclose, that small amount of money would show up as available dollars that aren't available.
You got it.
Mhm.
It'll still be in our tax calculation.
Right.
I,
What happens if we don't do anything?
That just would continue to
It'll-
It's
accumulate.
still gonna be on the calculation that
Calculation, and
says,
we'll never
exactly,
collect.
guys, it's not, doesn't matter. All right, I'm good.
I'd be inclined to think use your normal tax foreclosure policy,
Okay.
would be my opinion. I don't know if
You
that,
need a motion to that effect or not?
No, like I said, I would say only if you're choosing not to foreclose, because our normal process would be is foreclose on those that are delinquent, so.
okay.
All right. I
This
do
is a
have,
lot of work.
do have to head upstairs for another obligation. I'll be back as quick as I can.
Okay.
You're going to law?
I actually have to look first, and then I'll go back and
Law's
forth.
in the Wisconsin room.
Is it okay? Sounds good, thank you.
We're gonna be late.
Next item, discussion action regarding the upgrade of the wireless connectivity equipment in the sheriff's office squad vehicles.
Did you take action?
We're leaving it flow.
Go.
You want me to explain it?
You want me to read it first? Or somebody to read it?
Sure. You're the boss.
Yeah, right. Okay, this is the grant, upgrade the wireless connectivity equipment in sheriff's office squad vehicles. Whereas mobile technology in the Trempealeau County Sheriff's Office squad cars is dependent upon wireless communication as they travel throughout Trempealeau County while on duty. And whereas the squad cars' mobile data computers connect to the internet through these hotspots on the U.S. Cellular Network. And whereas U.S. Cellular Network currently provides coverage to approximately 70% of Trempealeau County, and whereas the hotspots utilized by the sheriff's office consists of old technology that needs to be replaced, and whereas Cradle Point, excuse me, is a company that develops cloud-managed wireless edge networking equipment, and whereas CradlePoint's system is a subscription-based device that can be connected to the U.S. cellular network, greatly enhancing wireless connectivity throughout Trempealeau County for the Sheriff's Office squad cars. And whereas the Sheriff's Department was awarded a law enforcement agency grant by the state of Wisconsin in the amount of $38,507. And whereas a portion of the grant funds will be used to adopt CradlePoint's system to improve wireless connectivity for the mobile data computers, and the remaining grant funds will be used for training and other items that qualify under the terms of the grant. And whereas this is a reimbursement grant, so Trempealeau County must spend the money upfront to get reimbursed by the grant. Now, be it resolved that the Trempealeau County Board of Supervisors hereby grants the transfer of $38,507 from the general fund to the Sheriff's Office account 101.52100.314, with the caveat that the grant received by the Sheriff's Office will be used to offset this amount and put back into the general fund on receipt. Now it says, let's see, that the Law Enforcement Committee introduced this, but I don't see signatures.
We got signatures.
You got signatures, okay.
You should have it done.
Sheriff, if I recall, this one is where we have to spend the money before he can get the money back from the state, so it's just really a formality. If we don't approve it, he can't request the money back from the state.
Right, yep.
I'd move for its approval.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. Any other discussion? Or did you have any comment about it?
Unless you wanted to know what it really meant. So I'll just say that right now we use subscription-based hotspots to connect our squad car computers wirelessly to the internet, and we need to do that because our deputies are dispatched through that software on that computer right now. So those devices are all 5 years old or older, and which is really good for digital technology for something that small. So this device, a CradlePoint, enhances the signal, which it'll make the computers will work even better, and it's a replacement that we have to do anyway. The cost of the replacement is right around $30,000, plus there'll be some installation costs, and then whatever's remaining, there are certain things we can spend that towards. So the resolution is asking for the full amount, so I don't have to come back here again for a $3,000 training request. And then once we get the money back from Wisconsin, then it'll go right to the general fund then. So.
Any other questions?
I move for that approval as long as you don't forget to return it.
I don't have a choice. Our revenues all go to the general fund. Almost all.
Okay. Motion. Any more questions of it? What, do you have an anticipated turnaround time on the money?
We have the account set up already for a direct deposit. All we have to do is submit the invoices. So I suspect it would be a matter of just a couple of weeks.
Okay. Sounds good.
It likely would be in 2023 though, but it might not be the 2022 year, so.
Okay. If there's nothing else, we'll call for a vote on this. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. Okay, I guess, let's see.
Dave, the one
Okay.
that you've got there in the blue,
Yep,
did that have the signatures on it?
it does not.
Because the copy I got shows signatures.
It does on my handout too. It shows signatures from law enforcement.
So I
It's not on
know
the
there's
back
an
page, is
original.
What's that?
So we'll have to wait and find that, right?
Well, we can,
No, there's the committee names, but no.
but they can re-sign this one, Paul. He said it in hard copy. You can
Yes,
re-
take that one,
And they can re-sign it.
we'll
Well,
make sure that the right ones that
yeah,
were at the
it-
meeting.
it's approved, so all you have to do
Did
is,
you sign the one that's
I didn't sign it yet, no.
Sign that one and I'll take care of the other
Okay,
half.
okay.
Put your real
And
name
there-
on this thing.
Meantime, I'll eat.
You know, law enforcement will be meeting here right after this one, so you'll be able to get those signatures if they're here. so.
Well, this committee, law enforcement's already met on this.
Right, but you're gonna need their signatures on there, right? You said you gotta get their signatures all over again because you don't have,
We'll do it on Thursday.
okay.
It's
I'll
easier
sign
that
it
way
right
when you're
now.
all here.
I'll sign it right now.
Well, you sign it, exactly, but you weren't at the law, so you can't
Oh,
sign
I
it.
can't sign that one.
You weren't there.
Okay, we're going to, the next item up is regarding the use of opioid settlement funds for medicinal substance and mental health services in the jail.
And this should be a resolution as well?
Yep. And your law enforcement committee met on this one. and-
Okay. Okay, I guess I can read it again. Or not again, read this one too.
You lucky guy.
You're doing good. Might have you work on it.
Yeah, he does a good job.
Whereas 90% of incarcerated individuals struggle with problems related to substances, and fentanyl overdoses are the #1 cause of death for people ages 18 to 45. And whereas the Trempealeau County Sheriff's Office for contracts with Advanced Corrections Health for jail medical needs, Freedom Behavioral Health, Inc., is a business partner to ACH and provides counseling services for substance use and mental health to the jail inmates. And whereas Dr. Melissa Caldwell, president of Freedom Behavioral Health, Inc., indicates that studies have shown that there is a direct correlation between opioid use/addiction and declining mental health and a greater risk of fatal overdose and suicide in those dealing with opioid addiction. And whereas Trempealeau County has been a litigant in a class action lawsuit against the manufacturers, distributors, and retailers of opioid substances, and whereas Trempealeau County has reached a settlement with some of the defendants in that class action lawsuit in the net amount of $718,968, and whereas Dr. Caldwell and her staff agree that increasing the number of hours for on-site mental health services in the Trempealeau County Jail from 6 hours per week to 8 hours per week would be beneficial to those incarcerated individuals who are opioid drug dependent and experience mental health deterioration. And whereas the cost of the additional 2 hours per week of on-site mental health services for 2023 will be $9,650.15. Now, be it resolved that the Trempealeau County Board of Supervisors hereby approves the transfer of $9,650.15 from the opioid settlement funds to the Sheriff's Office 2023 jail budget 101.52700.386 for a 2-hour per week increase in on-site mental health services. And that says it was introduced by the Law Enforcement Committee, but I don't have any signatures on this copy of that either.
It's the same stories.
We've got them on our copies.
Okay. Well,
If you go in your agenda packet, it'll be there.
probably.
It's a need-to-know basis only, Dave.
Oh.
We'll just pick it up.
Hello? Hello? Nothing?
So, this amount was originally included in my budget for 2023, and it is still in there. But since the budget was initially proposed to law enforcement in September, the settlement was agreed upon. And so we made the request, instead of asking for the $9,000 in my budget to continue, that we would use those funds to, the settlement funds to pay for that for 2023. It would become a budget item in 2024, however, if we chose to stay with 8 hours per week of on-site mental health coverage. So, so my request is that we would go from 6 hours per week to 8 hours per week for our mental health provider to be in the jail talking with our inmates at a cost of $9,000 plus there, and that come from the opioid settlement fund for 2023.
Are you saying currently what you have in the budget is for 6 hours that we're
What we, our budget proposal for 2023 included the 8 hours, and it was passed by law enforcement for the 8 hours, but that of course would come off if the county board approves this
So it
resolution.
would save 9,000 off our levy.
Be a dent in what we have to change the budget for.
Yeah. Okay. Do it all the racket, I'll make a motion. Nobody else wants to do it, I'll make a
Yep.
motion to approve it.
Second.
Second. Okay. Any questions, discussion?
Seems like it's appropriate funds to be spent.
And we did work with our mental health provider, ACH, and Melissa from Advanced Correctional, or from Behavioral Health, and Rick Niemeyer back and forth, just to make sure that it did fall within their guidelines.
Just along that same line, I think I saw a news report that the state settled with another big company in the last week or so.
That is true. However, we are quite a ways from getting any
getting
details of
dollars,
that
yes,
settlement
yeah.
yet, though. Yeah, there's a lot of work to do on that one,
Yeah.
but there's more coming, the way it
Yeah.
sounds.
So, okay, we have a motion and a second. No further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried.
Thank you.
And then we're supposed to sign this one that isn't signed before?
Yeah,
Okay. Next item, discussion action on proposed phone solution approved by property committee.
Morning.
Good morning.
Technically, this is a revenue-neutral project, so it doesn't need to appear before you. But money is involved, and you should be aware of how we came to a revenue-neutral place. So I thought you should hear.
Okay.
The new phone solution was selected by a committee inside the organization. We're going with the Zoom-hosted solution. The property committee approved the proposal. With the implementation costs, the equipment costs, and the monthly subscription fees, the 5-year cost is going to be $3,000 a month for the phones. The current solution that we've had since 2005, as near as I can figure, is somewhere between $1,500 and $2,000 a month. So in order for this to be revenue neutral, I had to find a way to shrink the cost of something else by $1,500 a month in order to come up with a revenue neutral. One of the reasons that Zoom was selected was because it would give us the flexibility to be able to allow staff to work through their computer. Their laptop becomes their phone. So we can stop handing out smartphones like candy. As of December of last year, the smartphone bill for just the courthouse, not including highway, was $6,100 a month. So the big bucks are not in the phone system, they're in the smartphones that you're handing out. We've already got that number down to $5,500 by eliminating lines that we were auditing and verifying. They're just not being used. We believe I have commitments from Human Services, Land Management, and the Sheriff's Office to eliminate another 30 lines, which comes to about $1,200 a month. We're going to get that number under $4,500 once we go live with this solution. So by this time next year, I can guarantee that we will be revenue neutral going forward. The goal ultimately is to get that smartphone number under 3,000. Just because if you've got a system in place that's as flexible as this Zoom, we should be able to move forward without handing out so many smartphones. There'll also be the flexibility, should we decide if the highway department wants to join in and become part of this solution, we can add them, and it'll still be revenue neutral. So I just wanted to report that to you and ask if you had any questions, so you didn't feel like you were getting blindsided by it when it got delivered to full county board.
Yeah, no, thanks, Tim. The only thing I would say is I think Tim's done a great job working with the department heads to get this understood and understand why it's such a good thing. And notwithstanding, there is still the option down the road to do a BYOD program for the highway department. Everybody's got their own cell phone. You know, we would have to work with human resources to come up with a policy for how that would work to reimburse people for, as a stipend for bringing your own device, which would substantially reduce the cost even further. So we can table, you know, that can be something that we go after down the road, but I think it's a great thing what we're doing here, so.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
You bet. Next item is any discussion or action on ARPA funds? Or a report? And/or a report?
The only report would be, I think I put it in your packets, that shows the running balance.
Oh, yeah. Okay, good.
There you go. Shows that county board action on October 17th of the radio towers is $1.597 million, which means we've obligated $3,973,748.62, leaving a balance of $1.785 million. And then they got all the requests down below, which total 11 million, to spread around that 1 million.
Okay.
So it won't go that far.
Just need to come up with 9.5, right?
If you
got
want
that
the rest
written
of the
down.
stuff done, yes.
Any questions of that report? FEMA funds?
Okay, we got notice from Integrity that the last submission that we had, which was well, I can tell you exactly, hold on. Was $246,294.17. I didn't make copies of this for you because
That's fine.
FEMA denied everything in red. This page, this page, this page. That page,
The whole page is
How
right
much
there.
did we get? Book better said.
$8,200.
Wow. And we spent how much?
We spent $615,000 total. We've got $90,000 back. Now we're gonna get another $8,000 here. And Integrity's cost was about $90,000, which we will also get back, because that's the administration costs.
We will get that back.
Yeah.
Well,
Supposedly,
We're
we're getting that
supposed
back,
to.
but we were told we were gonna get a bunch of this back too, and,
right.
So integrity didn't work out like we were hoping,
well, not
obviously.
compared to what the board was fed.
And this is all, this basically all was general fund money. It was taken out of the general fund to pay for, so we could submit the bills to FEMA to get reimbursed.
They did have a great sales pitch, though, didn't they?
Yeah.
So, that's where that sits.
Lesson, lesson learned for future promises.
Don't trust FEMA.
Well, yeah, that's a good
All their
way.
money goes to Florida.
Oh, well. Yeah, now I guess.
So that's where we're sitting. They're still working on some stuff for us and that, but, and I think Carol Gooch got an email. Let's see if I made a copy of that. Nope, I
Sam?
didn't.
Is there another meeting
That there might
scheduled in
be
here at
another
10:30?
30,000
Okay.
coming. That were
Oh, you
sheriff's
did. Okay,
department's expenses, so we might get a little bit more back. But it'll nowhere be near the 615,000 that we submitted.
It sounded so good at the time. It did, obviously.
Yes.
Next.
That was one of the reasons we bought all these laptops.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
Save on paper, and it was gonna be paid for under FEMA.
so.
I guess it's just a good thing that our general fund is still fairly healthy.
Okay. Budget discussion or updates?
Okay. Now, I didn't even bring my budget sheets. There are going to have to be some amendments on Thursday for the budget that was submitted. The resolution that was passed by county board for the county aid bridge construction was $180,000. Because remember, we had to send it back because it didn't add up right.
Yep, right.
Came up to 180. In our budget, we only have 177. So there's about $3,000 odd that we'll have to add to our budget and take from the general fund. We're already at 321,000 out of the general fund to balance the budget. And that's about the highest I've ever had. And so that's the first part anyway. Okay, so that 321 will be going up by 3,000 some odd dollars, okay? Second thing, managed care. We have always been paying the same amount every year. The bill comes from the state on managed care. Little background on it, it was when family care, managed care, same thing, was developed. And so positions from our human services department and our health department and other employees were taken from the counties, not just us, but from counties, and created these managed care units. And we were to pay $342,000 every year for 5 years. Well, we've been paying for closer to 10 years now. They said now it no longer is that 5-year thing, it's permanent, it's forever. The state, now I think I did put this in your packets.
I handed it up.
Handed it out, okay. It shows that they because different counties went in at different times, there was all these billing cycles that the state had. They want to, what is the word? Make it so that everybody gets billed at the same time. And so for us, it would be, for 2023, we have to pay 2 additional months to get onto the billing cycle that the state wants. That is going to be another $57,000, I think it's written on the bottom there, $57,540.37 that we have to add to our 2023 budget, which is another $57,000 coming out of the general fund to balance the budget. So those are two items that are going to have to be addressed on Thursday.
Is that a non-levy item, one of these state mandated things that
No.
you still got to levy for?
It's mandated by the state, and
In their levy limits, and they keep increasing what you got to pay?
so,
Pretty much.
if you want, on Thursday, I'm gonna give a suggestion anyway. If you want to change the budget, you can, because we'll have to take money out of the general fund. If you don't want to change the budget, at the end of the year next year, it'll be one of our overspent items, and the money will come out of the general fund anyway. So it's, what is that called? 6 of one and half a dozen of the other.
It's
Pay now or pay later.
Pushing it off in hopes for more tax revenue, that's all it is.
So I mean, you could leave it as a, overspent budget. and then-
Either way, we'd be coming out of the general fund somewhere along before the end.
Either way, it'll
It's
either
gonna
come
come out
out
of
now
general
or it'll
fund
come
no
out
matter
at the end
what.
of next year.
I'm pretty nervous about next year. We start opening a new building.
So those are two things that will have to be addressed on Thursday at the budget hearing, at the budget meeting.
I'd like to
And
take it out
now.
now.
Then, okay,
Yeah,
that's fine, because
I think
then,
that's what we should propose, because that way, coming from the finance committee, we at least suggest that this is what we would suggest. Otherwise,
yes, okay,
we're not doing our job.
there you go.
I agree, we should take it out of the fund.
So it'll be on then on Thursday, then after I've read the budget and we close the budget hearing, that's when you start making amendments to the budget. That's when technically somebody from this committee will have to make a motion that we increase the managed care by that 57,000, and also the highway bridge, county aid bridge to local bridges And I'll have the exact number. I didn't think about bringing that with. But it went from 177,000 to 180,000, and it might not even be 3,000. It might be.
It's close to
It's
that.
right in that vicinity.
So it's close to 60,000 total, I guess.
Yes, a little over 60,000.
Little over 60, right.
That we will have to add to the general fund
Take from.
and take from the general fund, yes. Because that'll be one line that's on the budgets. And then add to those respective two accounts, expenditure accounts.
Okay. Now, is there any kind of an update to the general fund, like somebody's turned money back in yet, or any, I mean, has
We don't
any
do that.
assistance along that side of it?
No, there was a point in time that we thought it would be a good idea to do it as we go, but sometimes a department might not have a bill that doesn't come in till the end of the year,
Okay.
and it's a big one. You know, they only pay once a year deal,
Okay.
and stuff like that, so it was very hard to calculate what kind of money would be
Okay.
coming back to the general fund. And of course, you've got the thing with Health Department and Human Services have both, for a few years, have always given back to the general fund.
Okay.
That's basically all I have. I'll get somebody the numbers, probably Dave, because he's chair of this committee now, so that you guys know that it has to be addressed, one way or the
One way
other.
or the other, so. Okay, well, next item is set time and date for the next regular meeting,
8:30, December 5th.
December 5.
8:30?
And if I can get to the law enforcement, I'll try and make sure it's not 10 o'clock on the 5th.
So. Okay, so the next item is item number
Closed
12.
session, yes.
We need a motion by somebody.
We have to go to, oh.
You gotta go in closed session, so
Right.
somebody's gotta make the motion.
Right.
And they
Sorry, I
usually have
just
to
read the
read what
number,
it
I didn't read the
says.
title.
Motion
Yeah.
to go into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute section 19.85, subparagraph 1, subparagraph F, for preliminary consideration of specific personnel type problems related to the actions of a current county board member.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second?
This is roll call.
Yep.
John Usson.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, Syverson.
Yes.
And Dave Larson, yes.
I would request that Bridget be able to sit in on it.
I see no